Hi guys. So we've been talking about vertebrates and we're going to start going through the different groups of vertebrates. And first up is fish. So these are some things you should know at the end of this video. I'd like you to take notes, please, on these questions. So first, what are the differences between the three classes of fish? So we'll talk about three different groups of fish. I want to look at the differences. And how do fish do each of the following? How do they breathe? How do they feed? How do they get rid of waste? How do they reproduce, circulate blood, and regulate body temperature? Some basics about fish. They were the first vertebrates to evolve. And the early fish didn't have bones, but they had cartilage. So cartilage is connective tissue. It's tough. It provides a lot of structure, but it's not bones. And they didn't have a jaw. There are three classes of fish, and when I say class, I'm talking about the different levels of classification: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And so we're talking about kingdom, Animalia, phylum, Chordata. Class is the next level of classification, and that's what we're talking about, different classes of fish. There's three of them. Agnatha are the jawless fish. Chondriichthyes are cartilaginous fish, and Osteichthyes are bony fish. And each of them has different adaptations for aquatic environments, so living in water. Agnatha is the first class we're going to look at, and the A part of the name means no, and the nath part of the name means jaw, so these guys are the jawless fish. Examples are hagfish and lamprey. These you may not have seen many of these in your life. They're pretty creepy. They have these, they don't have a jaw, but they have these crazy teeth, mouth parts. They have a cartilaginous skeleton, so again, no bones yet. And they don't really have the fins that that fish you typically think of as fish have. They don't have the paired appendages like the like bony fish do. And some of these guys are parasites. So lamprey, they're called lamprey eels sometimes, are parasites. And you see here two of them that are just, they take their mouth parts, they stick them onto a fish, and they just suck the fish's blood. So that's kind of gross. But my dad one time caught a fish that had a lamprey stuck to it, and he said it was kind of freaky. He threw it back. Next class is Chondriichthyes. These are the sharks and rays, and these guys, the chondra part of the name means cartilage, and the ichthyes means fish. So like ichthyology is the study of fish, if you've ever heard that word before. Sharks and rays, they have a jaw, and a lot of you maybe have seen a shark jaw before. They're pretty impressive, but the skeleton is still cartilage. So this whole shark, there's no bones in there, it's just cartilage. This group of fish has internal fertilization for reproduction, whereas a lot of fish have external fertilization. So the sperm meets up with the egg inside the animal's body. Some of them lay their eggs after they're fertilized. Some of them keep them inside of their body and have live young. The fish in Chondriichthyes have a strong sense of smell. Sharks can detect 1 drop of blood, I'm sorry, this is supposed to say, in 35 gallons of water. So in 35 gallons of water, if there's 1 little drop of blood, a shark would know. For their sense of, or one of their senses is that they have this lateral line on their side. So like on this picture up here, it's that line there, and it detects vibrations in the water. With the jaw, Chondriichthyes can eat much bigger food. Most fish in this group are carnivores. And you'll see that here that they have paired pectoral fins. So there's a fin there and a fin there coming off at their chest. And that means that they have more control over their movement in the water. And for fish in Chondriichthyes, their gills are exposed. So they have gills here. This one would have them here. But they don't have like a flap that moves water over their gills, and so water has to be constantly moving over their gills for them to breathe, which usually means they have to be moving. Third class is osteichthyes, and oste means bone. Ichthyes again means fish, so these are bony fish. This is the largest group of fish. Things like bass, trout, carp, things that you normally think of when you think of fish, right? They have a bony skeleton, they have jaws, they have paired fins. Most of their fertilization happens externally. A lot of them have swim bladders, which helps them with buoyancy. Like it's this kind of sac inside their body. They can fill it up, and it helps them to like go up and down in the water. They have a well-developed senses of smell and taste. Salmon will travel thousands of miles back to their birthplace to reproduce, and that's all based on those senses of smell and taste. Osteichthyes fish also have a lateral line where they detect vibrations. And these guys have an operculum, which is the flap that covers their gills, and so they like open and close their operculum to have water move over their gills so that they can stay still. So fish respiration, fish breathe through gills. So here's gills, there's gills of a shark. And oxygen diffuses across the gills and into the blood. There are some fish, this is a lungfish, and they're able to like gulp air, and so they can breathe air, so they can survive out of the water for periods of time. For feeding and excretion, for feeding, there's a lot of diversity in fish. We have herbivores, carnivores, some parasites, and some filter feeders, so pretty much the whole range. And their digestive tract's going to depend on the feeding method. So if they're herbivores, they'll have long intestines. It just depends. The path of food goes mouth, then esophagus, then the stomach where things start to get digested. Then there's this organ called the pyloric ceca that also helps with digestion, then intestines, and then out the anus. So that's similar to what we have. We don't really have this pyloric ceca so much. And for excretion, fish don't have to worry about water loss because they live surrounded by water, so they can pee anytime. They don't have to worry about getting dehydrated, and they can excrete their nitrogenous waste. So nitrogen is this, it builds up in our bodies and we have to get rid of it because it can hurt all vertebrates if you have too much of it. And fish can excrete theirs as ammonia. Other vertebrates can't excrete ammonia because if you have too much ammonia that builds up, like if we had too much ammonia build up in our bladder, that could be really bad for us. But since fish are peeing all the time and they don't really hold in their pee the way that other vertebrates do, the ammonia is fine because they just have a little bit of it in their system all the time. Fish have a two-chambered heart. Like we have a four-chambered heart, and so there's kind of a double loop where blood goes to our lungs, then our heart, then our body, then back to our heart. And for fish, there's just this single loop where blood comes, oxygen comes into the gills, then goes out to the body, then goes to the heart, and then back. Blood goes back to the gills. So there's just a single loop of the blood going into and out of the heart instead of two. This would only work for aquatic animals because it doesn't take as much energy to pump blood through and to breathe in the water as it does on land because there's more of that buoyancy. And for temperature regulation, fish are ectothermic, and ecto means like outside, so they get their heat from the environment. They a lot of times that's called cold-blooded. And since water temperature doesn't change as much as air temperature, it's easier for fish to regulate their body temperature than for vertebrates that live on land. For reproduction, fish have various methods. A lot of them do external fertilization, which means that the female lays eggs, and then the male spreads sperm over the eggs. Now this can be synchronous, which means that like both fish are there at the same time and it happens at the same time, or it can be sequential where the female would lay eggs and then later the male would come and notice that there's eggs there and spread sperm on top of it. There are some fish that do internal fertilization and live birth. Examples are guppies and some sharks. Here's a guppy that's giving birth to little live baby guppies there. And some fish hold their eggs in their mouth after external. So external fertilization happens, then they like scoop the eggs into their mouth to protect them. Also seahorses, the male will hold the eggs in a pouch. So the female deposits eggs in a pouch, the male seahorse protects them in there until they're ready to be born. So again, these are the things that you should have gathered from this video. So if you don't have notes on these, you want to go back. First of all, the differences between the three classes, the Agnatha, Chondriichthyes, and Osteichthyes, and then how do fish breathe, how do they feed, how do they get rid of waste, how do they circulate blood, regulate body temperature, and reproduce. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.